How's it going? I'm Ryan, and today I'm going to go over the two trades I took on SPY. The first being puts when we were around high a day, ended up being a loser. Second trade I took were calls after we broke on high a day and come back to retest the pre-market high. That was a winner that brought me to positive on the day overall. We'll get into those trades in just a second. We're looking briefly at the daily time frame here. We had a trend day for the seemingly the first time in a while, but a nice uptrend day, set new all-time highs. The morning was a little bit choppy, but once we started going, it really went. We'll take a look at some of the things I was watching. So we had this zone from the all-time high, kind of from 509.9 to 510.15 or so. We had that pre-market high right at 5:10. Why do I say it? 5:10. We have this zone to the bottom around 508.5 to 508.7. And that's really it, aside from yesterday's high a day and low a day. But obviously with us making new highs, no zones to the upside. Right off the bat, like I said, this morning was a little choppy, kind of hard to read. We didn't really have a trend for the first half an hour or so. We had a bunch of data come out at 8, and you see that huge spike in volume, and you see this massive candle, right? We had a big push up, push back down. Ultimately, we held this zone in here, and this would have been a great area to take calls. I had a trend line during the day looking like that, that we were kind of consolidating in this range. We broke out right before news, so did not take any trade here. But this return back and test of this zone and this broken trend line would have been an excellent place to take calls. We never really came back down from there. But I wanted to give it a few minutes, especially after news came out, because we had such a wild reaction, to let things kind of sort themselves out. And the first trade that I took was puts in here. So we had this area right around 510 where we rejected in the pre-market. There's also that previous all-time high. We came up, tested this area, and had an upper wick close on this 5-minute candle. After we had rejected from this area on this massive candle here, once we came up and started to look like we might get a rejection as well, and had that pre-market high where we kind of rejected off this area, I was confident in taking some puts here. So I want to swap it over to the 1 minute and we'll take a closer look. So I think the 1 minute might tell a different story, right? We had a really bullish push into this area, closing right at that 510 level or that pre-market high, a bearish engulfing right after that. And then we had a drop in volume here. So you see that volume was pretty high as we tested this area and rejected initially. And then as we pushed up into it, volume was dropping, and that gave me the confidence to take a put here. My stop was a break above this high here, so around like 510, a little over 510. This candle here stopped me out. From there, we kind of chopped around before making all-time highs. So taking a stop here was a good decision. We still were in an uptrend on the day, and holding on to this, you see we never really did pull back, right? And that would have just caused me more pain to try to hold on to that. So that was my first trade of the day. I can say that it wasn't the best trade because we were in an uptrend. We were showing strength. But nonetheless, you know, some of this 5-minute price action did look like we might get a reversal here. So not mad that I took it, but ideally I think want to trade with the trend rather than against it, even if, well, I think if you're going to do it, you just got to have a tight stop and be willing to risk it. So that was the first trade, and that was a loss of about 15% or so. And I should mention, so I mentioned my stop loss. My target was kind of this high here around like 509.4. I didn't think we'd get a massive sell-off or anything. I just was seeing if we could get, you know, a solid like 50, 60 cent pullback, which is what I was targeting, was this previous high a day here. My second trade of the day, once we broke above and created a new high, my second trade was calls in this area here. So we pushed up, pulled back, and second trade was solid. As you can see, we pushed up to create new highs off this pullback, and we held yesterday's high a day around 509.7 really well. My, I guess, error in this trade was taking an entry maybe too early. So I could have waited for this 5 minute to close, and I think I could have, I think having this 5 minute close and hold yesterday's high a day would have been a better entry. And I'll show you why I entered where I did and why I think I could have waited. So while that 5 minute candle was still forming, I entered on this candle here. Reason being is that we had this test of the pre-market high here, hold, and then we had this candle here on increasing volume, push down, hold, and close green. So on this candle, I got in thinking that we were going to get that continuation. Immediately after I got in, we printed this pretty high volume candle here where we pushed all the way down to the test that yesterday's high day before kind of closing a little higher. So I won't lie, this had me sweating a little bit as this was ultimately my stop. I wanted to probably place my stop below this wick, but with the speed in which this candle printed here, I didn't stop out. And once we pushed up and closed back above this wick and held yesterday's high day, I kind of moved my expectations to a push below yesterday's high day to be my stop. So moved my stop loss, entered a little too early. I think I really want to get in the habit of waiting for a 5 minute candle to close before entering. And that's something that's kind of gotten me not so much in trouble, but I've taken some less than ideal entries in the past week because of entering before the 5 minute candle closes. So just little tweaks to my strategy here. And that's something that I'll be looking to do going forward, is wait for those 5 minute closes before entering. That being said though, we kind of pushed down here, and I'll switch it back over the 5 minute. This candle close here kind of had me nervous because we held yesterday's high day, but then we pushed up and pushed back down and closed looking not too great. The one thing, I guess there's two things that made me feel a little better though, is that this candle was low volume and that we had done the previous, but right before the all-time high, we had done the same thing, right? We had come up, printed this candle, it looks pretty bearish, then pushed up and created all-time high. So this here on low volume, I didn't like the close, but the fact that we were still holding yesterday's high day made me feel confident and continue to hold through this. Once we pushed up here, I took profit once we hit the high of day here, so right around 510.48 or so. And I took, so we'll switch back over the 1 minute chart so we can see exactly where I took profit. I took profit on this candle here. Once we came up to that high a day, it was pretty good profit. I held a runner through this. We came down here. This didn't stop me out, but it did make me a little nervous. So as we pushed back up here towards high a day again, I cut my second position. So I only had 2 contracts, took one on this candle, took my second on this one once we got back up to that previous high a day. Overall, this trade was a solid win. I was down on the day and this put me up, a few dollars. So risk to reward could have been better. If had I waited for that 5 minute to close and maybe entered in here, that would have been a much better entry and that risk to reward would have been better. Having that said, we trended up for a while after that. My ideal target was 511 just because it's a whole number. I didn't have any targets to the upside because we hadn't been up here before. So I was ideally hoping that we would get that push up to 511 and that would have been my target. I was trading 511 calls, so slightly out of the money. But with that being said, something that I kind of came to the conclusion today is that while I'm trading a small position size of maybe 1 to 2 contracts, I think leaving that runner, especially with same day expiration, just a pullback like this can stop you out at break even. So you can be up 30% here, get one red candle, and that would stop out my runner. So I think with the smaller size, it's kind of hard to trim 50% and then leave the other 50% as a runner. It's not really the greatest strategy. ideally I would have maybe like 4 or 5 contracts, so that I could take profit on, 3 to 4 contracts and leave 1 left, right? And that way my runner is a smaller percentage of my position. And if I get stopped out at break even, so what? And I wouldn't be sweating so much because I'd already secured, 30, 20% on my other remaining contracts, the majority of my position. So with that being said, I guess what I'm going to say is that 2 things I've learned this week and 2 things I look to apply following weeks is that I'll wait for 5-minute candle closes to take my position. And I'm going to be, I guess, less inclined trying to leave a runner, because the past week, some of my winning trades would have been better winners had I just not even left a runner and just taken both contracts off at my initial price target. That does leave me the inability to maybe capture a big run like this, but it also alleviates me of some of the stress of being up 30% and then watching my contract come back to break even, right? With only 2 contracts, I don't have a lot of leeway there to leave a runner. So what I'm saying is that ideally, I would have taken both contracts off at this point. I would have had a bigger winner than I did overall. And, I guess if it does pull back, I could always re-enter the trade, right? Get a better entry, and try to capture more of that move. So those are some of the tweaks that I'll be applying. Other than that, I am really liking kind of the strategy that I'm employing here in terms of these zones. I'm watching levels from the previous day high, previous day low, and then pre-market high and pre-market low. Other than that, I'm using kind of these demand supply zones. And they work out pretty well. You can see how price action's been responding to these. And so I'm going to continue to do that and continue to tweak that. But I think I'm really starting to find things that I like, and it's just a matter of tweaking them and adjusting my strategy. And that's something that I'll continue to do. I have a lot to learn. I have a lot to grow from. But with a smaller account, waiting for those 5-minute closes to get a better entry, potentially minimizing my risk, and then trying to maximize my profit by taking those wins when I have them, rather than leaving a runner that could potentially get stopped out, instead of just accepting, a 30% gain, which is a great trade. So that's all I got. I look forward to next week. We're in an interesting position, right? We have an all-time high again. I'm excited. I'm excited to kind of continue to tweak these things and continue to try to learn and get better. But I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. I trade live Monday through Friday, so I'll be here all next week trading live. Stop by if you feel so inclined. We'd love to have you. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Peace.